Okay, Rob, I'm just a little disappointed in you that when you were out here, we didn't get to hook up and make play tour guide for a while, and you could have been down here, and then we'd have turned right around because it's closed because of the cough. But a lot of other places I could have shown you. The Flying Saucer House from Sleeper, for instance, just outside of town. Milo Comics Maker Store. But I mean, I could have arranged it. I would never would have known where Mecca was too. She could have kept her secrecy and whatever. But next time, it was a bad time anyway, so just as well. And on with the video. Okay, it is time for the end of year review for Star Trek Lower Decks. And that's a little bit of happy stuff before we wind up with Discovery coming on. But yeah, but this is the letter I recently sent and was read by Rob Burnett on his observations thing, and he had some valid points, but I think he comes from a different perspective. Because right at the back, he didn't grow up on sitcoms, old sitcoms like that. I did. He watched a lot. He was watching old movies when he was little. I was watching old sitcoms and watching some old movies, but mainly a lot of old sitcoms because the way the let me television in the 70s. Okay, out here we had our CBS station, NBC station, ABC station, educational station. It may not be PBS, but it was a little before that, and then an independent station, which is Channel 2. Now it's a CWB. But back then it was independent. And actually, during the daytime, when you weren't getting network, and mainly weekends too, but on the network station, when you weren't getting soap operas or game shows, they'd throw you'd throw in some reruns or whatever. But Channel 2 especially, they lived and died on old reruns. So mainly Addams Family, McHale's Navy, Hogan's Heroes, Leave It to Beaver. Also, so that's what I was growing up on back then. And even the Patty Duke show. For some reason, they never ran F Troop. I don't know why, but you got a lot of the old sitcoms like that. So, at that point, I considered life to be nothing but a big sitcom. Looking for a punchline. So, with that in mind, that's I think that may be a big thing. Also, why I have no problem with Lower Decks. Not a big one, because everything is fair game for a sitcom type of thing. So let me just get into this letter here. A little email here in defense of Star Trek Lower Decks. And to Robert Burnett, for me. I think we're all in agreement that both Discovery and Picard are both hot garbage inside a raging dumpster fire. Lower Decks, however, doesn't belong in the same category as those other two abominations. To begin with, let me restate my Trekkie credentials for the jury. Those coming in late, I was 2.5 years old when Star Trek premiered on NBC, and reportedly, little toddler me watched the show alongside my father. As such, I have no moment of first discovery of this thing called Star Trek. It's always been a part of my life. When we bought my first Enterprise model in 72 or so, there wasn't a what's that moment. I already knew what she was and I wanted her. I already knew that the animated show wasn't the original. And in grade school, I became aware of the larger Star Trek fandom that was out there, largely through the books like Star Trek Lives and World of Star Trek from David Gerrold, and also the making of Star Trek. I got into that. Started writing letters to the Star Trek Well Committee, and occasionally to Paramount themselves. I am presently assisting Bejo Trimble in assembling a new and likely final update to the Star Trek Concordance. In short, I will put my Trekkie bona fides up against anyone. This is mainly to anybody out there. You're not a true fan. Bull. I dare you to call me a true fan after that. Okay. Deny I'm a true fan. Well, this thing is literally lifelong for me. Okay. I don't have any memories of discovering Star Trek. Like I said, I was 2.5 when it debuted. So it's been there. Like Santa Claus and Mickey Mouse, and I already knew what it was. So I was excited when in the 70s they started airing Star Trek on Channel 4. It's like, wait, finally, I can watch it and remember it. But I get, Okay, so it is with a lifetime of study and affection for the original series and its offshoots that I say, without reservation, that Discovery, I take a cue from Stuart Foley at Trek Yards and refuse to call it Star Trek Discovery, because it is clearly not a part of the Star Trek universe, and Picard, they clearly attach themselves to Discovery, so same thing, no Star Trek Picard, are not Star Trek. At best, they're alternate versions of Star Trek, but to use the correct current parlance, they are not canon. And yeah, the thing with Discovery violated within the first 10 minutes between the Klingons and just everything getting stupid. It's like, no, sorry. And Picard, it's attached itself pretty firmly to Discovery. So guess what? All right. It is with equal conviction and purely fanboy authority that Lower Decks is. It's just Star Trek is seen from a different angle than we're used to, hence the apparent discrepancy. Different part of the elephant, so to speak. It's the old thing of, get 10 blind guys groping around an elephant. They all think they're, holding on to a different thing. I'll deal with the show itself, but first off, what really hurts Lower Decks at this point in the timeline is it being I know I phrased it right. I'll deal with the show itself, but first off, what really hurts Lower Decks at this point in the timeline is it being associated, incorrectly I think, with the two aforementioned dumpster fires. After those two disasters, the disgruntled fan base was in no mood for a sitcom. So regardless of the quality, it was going to be slammed by the more vocal elements of the fandom menace. The situation reminds one, something a thing I got from Stuart Foley pointed out. This is what, and I agree with him on this. The situation reminds me of one of Picard's lines from The Wounded. That's where Captain Maxwell is going around blowing up Cardassian ships. I think when one has been angry for a very long time, one gets used to it, and it becomes comfortable, like old leather. And finally, it becomes so familiar that one can't ever remember feeling any other way. I think that's what it's come to, because we have so gone after Discovery and Picard, Hammer and Hook, that the next thing comes along, it doesn't matter. It's fair game. Next one, Now, I like to think that my daring to stand up to Doomcock during the Inquisition, when they were roasting Lower Decks on a spit, has finally gotten a few folks to back off a little bit on the criticism of the show. That's likely my ego, but just the same, the level of hatred for the show has leveled off a tad. And my subs have gotten over 1,300, so... Because, they have lightened up a little bit. It's, even Gary said it's the most watchable of the three out there. And a lot of the criticisms lately come from me that said, well, it wasn't, they didn't hate it, So it's backed up a little bit there. And I think it's the fact that, because they think, oh, we like that. Well, Captain April likes it. And again, I will rate my rounds off. If I like it, there must be something to it. Okay. Probably the biggest help Paramount could give to Lower Decks, and they do seem to be shifting everything over to Paramount, is to produce a serious, dramatic Star Trek show set on the Enterprise E or the Titan or some other ship, but in the same era. Sorry. And to serve as a backdrop for Lower Decks. As it stands, having Lower Decks as the sole representation of canonical Star Trek is like F Troop being the only Western, or McHale's Navy or Hogan's Heroes being the only World War II shows. Of course it comes off as insulting. With the effective backdrops being Discovery and Picard, it only gets worse. So the two big things that need to be done for Lower Decks, on the part of the audience, stop associating with Kurtzman Trek, because it ain't. Kurtzman's not associated with it. He's not actively producing. He's not the showrunner. He's not writing. None of his idiots are writing for it. This is all Mike McMahon stuff. It's all on them. Don't just because Kurtzman's getting a check on it doesn't mean he's doing anything with it. All right. And on the studio's part, get a serious Star Trek show on the air in the same era. Preferably with absolutely no involvement whatsoever from Alex Kurtzman and his secret hideout. So best case scenario, we're talking a couple of years. At that point, his contract's up and he's gone. As for the show itself, the key thing to remember is that this ain't the Enterprise. The reason we watch that ship and all the other Enterprises is this was the most important ship in the fleet doing the most important stuff. That's why we're watching them, and not some boring support ship at the bottom rungs of Starfleet delivering pizzas, like the Cerritos. And here's where, again, where Rob kind of took a little offense, because it's Starfleet. Everyone's supposed to be the best of the best. That's not the way humanity works. Okay, you got to acknowledge at some point, regardless of Gene's lofty goals and everything else, where they were talking the best humanity, we're talking the best humanity on the Enterprise. This was the best crew and the best ship doing the big thing. People are still people. That's why you still had the occasional crazy Commodore, stick up his butt admiral, and bureaucrats who couldn't find their ass with a hole in the ground without guard dogs, ambassadors who didn't give a rat's ass the fact they're being shot at. Lower those ships, no. Bureaucracy. Roddenberry hated bureaucrats. Okay, so a lot of the stuff in here, like they've shown, like Beta 3 being, we've done our part and then moving on. Remember, a lot of people getting, they wouldn't have done. Don't be so sure. That was 100 years ago when Kirk left his little, cultural survey team with Lindstrom and the rest. You think there's still a Federation team there after all those years? You think maybe okay, if they're on a good path there, we'll go now. Have fun. And then only periodically checking in. Make sure they haven't. And then, one of these check-ins in, oh dear, they're going back to Landru. And that's why the Cerritos gets dispatched there. The Cerritos didn't just happen upon Beta 3. They were sent there. Why? Because, Starfleet does check up eventually. But in this case, it's like, they label it as a known society. They've done their cultural thing. And I think there's another case of where the definition they're going for first contact and second contact is a little different than what we generally would think of. In other words, second contact is not going to be the second ship there. If they're still learning about a culture and they're still making it, it's going to be first contact up until they figure, okay, we've got it. When you start doing actual infrastructure and stuff like that and support, that's what they consider second contact. All the cultural discovery and the questioning and analysis and stuff, that's considered first contact. When the Cerritos comes in, starts laying in, sewer lines and communication relays and learning whether all the restaurants are there and how do you spell the names, that's considered second contact. By that point, it's all we're all friends now. We don't care. Here's your pizza. All right. So where to leave off here? Okay. All right. Like many fans and wannabe creators, I've had my own ideas about regarding flipping that narrative on its head. It's like, we've seen the best ship in the fleet, the most crucial station in the Federation, and that lone ship flung halfway across the galaxy. How about we tag along with the worst ship in the fleet? And there's a best ship by definition. There's got to be a worst ship, right? You're comparing. The Enterprise was the even before there was a Federation flagship. The Enterprise is considered the best ship in the fleet. Spock was considered the best first officer of the fleet. Kirk is probably the most dynamic. If you're going to call something the best, by definition, even if it's not that much separation, something's going to be the worst. Okay? There's no getting around that. And you can't have an entire fleet. I'm sorry, Rob, but you can't. Of thousands of personnel and hundreds of ships, and all of them being the best of the best of the best of humanity. Especially when, again, you got to have support ships. Not everyone's out there exploring. They got to be ready for anything. Like the Cerritos and other ships, they need to be ready for these unknowns to show up out of nowhere. But they're not out. That's not their mission. That yellow stripe on the hull, that's an engineering support ship. They're there to set up the sewer lines and the power stations and deliver the pizzas. They're not there making first contact. And everyone they're going on to is a known society. Federation's already been there and said the hellos and established relations and everything else. And here's that transmitter you ordered. That's all they're for. And they want anchovies with that. But I mean, it's not even the same. They're not even doing the same uniforms. Okay, this is like a Merchant Marines division of Starfleet. Okay, so yeah, What kind of people man these low-level support ships that don't explore uncharted space and make first contact? Where they don't necessarily have to present themselves as humanity's finest. Yeah, they already met humanity, okay? People to people. Okay? That's not going to change. We maybe get past the petty jealousies and backstabbing stuff, but people are still people, yeah? There's going to be times where we want to slough off. Okay, so at that rung of the ladder, yeah, folks are going to goof off a bit more. But what of the Federation and Starfleet? Overall, does Lower Decks portray them in any way close to the dystopian manner we see in Discovery Picard? No, it's the same Starfleet, the same Federation as previous canonical Star Trek. Everyone's fed, clothed, well-educated, provided for. We're just seeing them from ground level, not from the bridge of the Federation flagship. That's another thing. It's also how Star Trek is. How do they portray Earth? Well, we really can't say for a very long time there because we never even see Earth in the Star Trek, except for throughout almost all of the original series, all we saw of Earth was an illusion in the in the cage, but then the menagerie of Pike and Vina at a picnic outside of Mojave. And it's, okay, it's green, there's trees, there's that weird city way in the background. That was Earth. That was it. That's all we saw of Earth in the 23rd century. And really, Star Trek never went to Earth in the time the show was set until the Next Generation. And even then, it was a Starfleet headquarters. I don't think we saw anything of Earth society until Deep Space Nine, when they're hanging out at Cisco's dad's restaurant. So we still really never see that much of Earth in the 23rd century. We're just assured that everyone's fed, everything. It's a post-scarcity economy, which is we got replicators and fusion power, and then planets. They only use the many antimatter for like high energy applications like warp drive. Usually everything's on fusion. So you've got anything you want at the touch of a button, and power, cheap, almost free power. At that point, all the previous economic things go out the window, because mostly what drives economies is scarcity of resources. And you give me 5 of these gold pieces, I'll give you a steak. That sort of thing. When you can now just push a button and get a steak, why do I need to pay you for it? That's the thing. That's the kind of thing where suddenly money is useless. Okay, money makes no sense. You still got some kind of currency, exchange, credits, but it's a totally different thing. It changes the thing. Oh, place. Probably the best explanation was on the Orville. That's not the worst, but that's getting off track. All right, so if anything, Lower Decks could be seen to make Starfleet look a little better, even for a colossal screw-up like Mariner. There is a place for you in Starfleet. You don't have to be a James Kirk or Jean-Luc Picard to make it in Starfleet. You can be a Beckett Mariner or a Brad Boimler and still have a life. In fact, there's a whole other division for Starfleet just for regular Joes. Like, if you don't want to, you don't necessarily interested in being, the next James Kirk, discovering all these strange new worlds and making contact with all these other planets, and you just want a job. Yeah, we got support crews. You can work on a base somewhere. You just want to crawl around in conduits and fix stuff. Hey, you can do that there. And as well as incessant references with the 2 other productions, they don't do it right. You can tell. It only shows someone can do a search on Google or Memory Alpha or read an episode synopsis on Netflix. And that's the only way I can explain Picard, because they clearly never bothered to actually watch Measure of a Man. Because at the end of that hearing, they pretty much invalidate the entire premise of Star Trek Picard. That's the one time I'll refer to as Star Trek Picard. So you don't think, why do you mean a different, invalidated this captain? No, it invalidated that series. Because that's the ruling that established rights for androids. And then here comes Kurtzman with his Picard show, and it's like, you keep referring to Measure of Man, but you never watched it. You keep bringing up Maddox. It's like, one, you don't even bother to get the same. The actor's still alive. I'm sure he would have come back, even if it was just to kill him off. All right. And I've heard this one before. Star Trek is like a foreign language. And those of us who are native speakers can tell when someone's cribbing from a Berlitz book. Mike McMahon, on the other hand, is, along with his writing team, are native speakers. But thanks to that burning bridge in the background that represents the current state of fan relations, they feel they have to use a little more of the dictionary to make the point across, to win back all of us disaffected hardcore fans who are waiting for our turn to vent our spleen over Kurtzman and his merry band of morons. And I was a comment in one of my videos reviewing that he would have quit after the 4th episode if it wasn't for all the references. So in that regard, mission accomplished. It keeps you hooked. Okay, yes, this is Star Trek. Really, believe us. When they start throwing back, yeah, remember Kirk, we did this and that. Yes, they know it. They're making it clear that they are a part of the. Star Trek Watch Party coming up. Okay. So in summation, I offer the following: stop lumping Lower Decks with a Kurtzman crap. It might take a while to get the foul taste of Discovery and Picard out of our collective mouths, but if you can manage that, it'll be easier to appreciate Lower Decks. And that's what I do. I don't consider Discovery or Picard Star Trek in any way, shape, or form. They are gross parodies at best. So Lower Decks come along. Yeah, it is Star Trek. And I look at, and again, I use the little touchstone of the different font for Star Trek used in the Discovery and Picard as opposed to Lower Decks. They use the old classic font. That is a licensing thing. Because look at the model kits. All the mainline canonical ships have Star Trek and regular Star Trek, classic font on the packaging, and the Discovery stuff has that jagged little font. So it is a market thing. So but it does make it very clear that it's a separate license and separate property. Okay, judge it as the comedic counterpart to First Contact, Insurrection, Nemesis, DS9, anything in that era. In this context, Discovery and Picard never happened. Note they even showed Romulus live and well. Comparisons to Rick and Morty are also a little target, but that's much more surreal. Very weird. And this is really more of a Venture Brothers take against Star Trek, as opposed versus Star Trek's Johnny Quest in that scenario. At least that's my opinion. I could be wrong. So with that, I think we got a hint at the end there of where the show is going to go. Whether or not Boimler is going to do something to get bounced back to Cerritos, I don't know. But I think Captain Freeman and Mariner have reached a bit of an understanding that, yes, it's good for the captain to maintain protocol and order, but sometimes you need an off-the-wall thinker like Mariner when you get into these situations where it's like, what the hell do we do in this situation? Because the book doesn't answer that question. That was Kirk's big thing. He was a by-the-book officer until the book made no sense. Then he went off. And he'd come up with some harebrained scheme, that even Spock would be shaking his head. But hey, it worked, Because logically and by regulations, the Viserys would have ended up blowing up the Enterprise because they would have said, okay, we give up. But it was, out of result of a little bit of a spat between Kirk and McCoy that he got the brainstorm, not chess, Mr. Spock, poker. And then you got the Corbomite thing. It's a little understanding, yes. The captain is in command and they're going to run the ship. But every once in a while, okay, Mariner, any ideas? We need something wild here because, Freeman is a decent enough captain. Her imagination doesn't go to the subversive levels that Beckett does. So, anyhow, let's just a quick look at what we established here, especially with that last episode. No, they didn't change uniforms for Starfleet. They still got the gray shouldered colored turtleneck thing for mainline Starfleet, but the division that was Starfleet that the Cerritos is in, different uniforms. So it indicates it's a whole nother division of Starfleet. And a lot of people think, hey, we never would have done that. And, well, again, you do have to bring up Kirk not checking in on Khan. Or for that matter, nobody checking in on Khan. And noticing that suddenly the SETI Alpha system is missing a planet. Somebody should have followed up on that. But, bureaucracy is bureaucracy. So I don't think it's particularly unrealistic to think that, okay, they missed a few things here. And again, it just has to be a few. We just happen to see those few. The ones they don't miss, we don't bother because there's no story there. So, and again, this is a comedy. If the last episode, it was a serious show, yeah, Peanut Hamper would have bravely taken the assignment, gone over to the Pac-led ship, and delivered the virus, and maybe gotten out ahead. They would have rescued her, and she'd been battered up into a real dramatic scene. But it's a comedy. Comedy hinges on people doing stupid stuff sometimes. And you can't always have that stupid stuff happen for people outside your main characters. Sometimes you got to have your main characters do a dumbo. And that's where the comedy comes in. You're trying to, watching them being a dumbass sometimes. Okay? Because one thing, when the Monty Python was doing Life of Brian, originally the idea was Brian was going to be the 13th disciple that always got things a little messed up here, They're supposed to meet at the garden, after the Last Supper, supposed to meet in the garden, and Brian goes to a nightclub called the Garden and misses the whole thing. And it's like, the problem they had was anytime they got within proximity of Jesus, the comedy died. Because Jesus, the very intelligent, smart, and you couldn't have him do something stupid. Okay? And he wouldn't allow anything stupid to happen around him. So I think the biggest thing of what they came to the conclusion of is when they're early on, he's doing the Sermon on the Mount. And you see, blessed are the, and you get further and further back and as far away from Christ as you can until they're way in the back. What is that? Blessed are the cheesemakers? What is that? And that was the kind of thing. They had to and then established once and for all, hopefully those who are really paying attention, that no, Brian is not Jesus. There's Jesus over there. The one preaching on the mountain. Brian's clear on the back wondering what the hell's going on. So, and again, there's also things where I grew up watching sitcoms. This is what sitcoms do. Somebody does something dumb, Even characters normally are very intelligent. Something stupid has to happen for the comedy to ensue. And yeah, after the Samaritan Snare, nobody took the Pac-led seriously. Certainly nobody in the audience. So it's not that hard to believe that Starfleet had put out some kind of keep an eye out for these morons, okay? But that would be about it. They would never would have thought they'd be a serious threat to anybody. It's like these guys occasionally watch out distress signals or things that because there might be a Pac-led behind you, might be a little problems. But nobody expected a Pac-led ship to come out of nowhere and just rip ships apart. Okay? Because even Picard, after Q, Q may have done the right thing for the wrong reason. What we need is a kick in our complacency. So, now might be a time to go back and re-watch Lower Decks. Especially now that we know where it winds up and where everything goes. And a little more about Mariner's character and something happened to her at around 8 years old. And I'm guessing probably a parent's divorce. Now, we never did hear the Admiral's last name, but maybe Admiral Mariner. So I think it is very, she had to go off and live with her mother on Star Ships for a while as a little kid. And Mom wasn't exactly maternal. Something I can actually somewhat agree with, identify with what they were saying. I'm going any further than that. But it may be the case that she joined Starfleet to get away from Mom. And for a while it worked for a while when she done her thing, but something happened. And Starfleet's face, this is one of the brightest young officers we've had in a very long time. We don't want to lose her. But she needs some work. And so it's a case of we can drum her out and then lose it. Or Captain Freeman, you have any ideas what to do about your daughter? Okay, I'll take her. Keep an eye on her. Keep her, hopefully shape her. And that's not particularly unreasonable either, okay? And it also doesn't make her a Mary Sue. The fact that she screwed up and got busted back to ensign, that right there. No, she's not a Mary Sue, okay? If she had been, a Mary Sue character is perfect in every way, and everyone loves her, and everyone. Michael Burnham's a Mary Sue, Because after all the crap she did, she still got everyone on that ship ready to go into the far future for her. And take the ship with her. Even after they've already beaten Control. There's no need to go into that freaking wormhole. By all rights, they should have let her go. Foop, okay, bye. Reverse engines. We're going back to Starfleet, you dumb bitch. Come on. You take your Iron Man suit and get out of here. Yeah. But no, they follow along. And mark my words, Season 3 of Discovery is going to be a bad ripoff of Andromeda. Okay. So if you really want to follow the storyline but watch it better, watch Andromeda. Andromeda is better actor, and I like Kevin Sorbo much better than like Sonequa Martin Green or anybody else on the show. But I don't think I might start. That's on Prime, isn't it? Andromeda? Pretty sure it's on Amazon Prime. It's on one of the services. But
I think it was at some point.
But yeah. I mean, I've got all the episodes downloaded for Lower Decks. I'm going to keep them, well. But, yeah, if as soon as the DVD, the DVD and Blu-ray come in, yeah, I want the DVD and Blu-ray. One, I want all the extras. But also know something, you could just about do a live-action show with the voice cast. That's usually the best thing. Because you could do the same thing with the early days of the Batman animated series. You could have put these people on screen as those characters. Would have been great. But I contend that no. Going by just some strict criteria. Lower Decks is canonical Star Trek. The tech matches, the uniforms are, everything matches up on there. They don't violate anything. They refer to a whole lot of crap. And yeah, it's just something that gets annoying after a while. But again, do others. That's what kept them hooked. That's what kept them convinced. Yeah, this is show. This is a legitimate Star Trek show. That's why we're referencing all this stuff to tie into it. I mean, for God's sake, most of how we can establish the animated series was canon is because of the references made to it by DS9 and Void, and I think the Void, but then there's in DS9 and Enterprise made direct references to animated stuff. That pretty much tied it. Yes, it's official now. The animated series is canon. And we can go, and I already went into that one time about why didn't Roddenberry say it wasn't canon? He didn't want to deal with the arguments from some people, okay? And the fact is that there was a legal dispute going on between the ownership of animated series between Paramount and Filmation, who did the actual production. Paramount only distributed it. And rather than have to deal with the ramifications of having to send royalty checks to Filmation, they just declared animated series off limits. And rather than go into the things of why, Roddenberry just, and he did this a lot in other things, where he didn't want to deal with the conflict or explanation. He just said, I don't like it anymore. He never said that to B. Joe Trimble or Dorothy Fontana. He said it to his underlings who had to deal with the authors and and the writers who wanted to make a reference to say the Kazinti. And why am I looking over here? There. But had to make reference to to these animated series things, and weren't allowed to because there's some dispute. So it's a better. Now I don't like it anymore. It doesn't count anymore. Just shut it down, send it on, and be done with it. And I saw that theory first on Trek PBS. Someone pointed out, and again, the timing was such that Filmation was doing things, they were getting away from the property or whatever, and they were dispute, the hashing out between Paramount and Filmation over animated series, and I bounced on people who knew Gene, and they've all said, yeah, that sounds like him. Yeah. He would just chalk it and just boom. Because he learned when he was a little kid, he got accused of doing something. And rather than make and he didn't do it, but rather than go through a big, long, drawn-out discussion over why he didn't do it, fine, I did it. Leave me alone. Just blow it off, going on with life, doesn't matter. Yes, Roddenberry had a very curious relationship to the truth sometimes. But I think basically we're going to have Mariner, Freeman be the upright captain, but occasionally have Mariner brought in to assist with some harebrained scheme to save the ship and all the crew. Rutherford is probably get another implant because he's probably got some ugly gaping holes in his head.
No more Boimler, huh?
Boimler, that's the thing. Do they want Jack Quaid back or whatever, or do they want the character back? And what's going to happen? Again, he's on the Titan. He's loving it. He practically is the regulations. So what's he get? If does he do anything to get sent back down or what? That's gonna be the question. What happens to Boimler? Or do they just bring another character? Who knows? And of course, Tindy is gonna be all bubbly and everything else as she and Rutherford get reacquainted, and there'd be a new security officer coming in. And we get to know him and find out what all is about that. Maybe that'll be a way to get Michael Dorn back in. Who knows?
Yeah,
Although he'd be getting up there, though. So they think he'd go back to being security chief on a lower level ship? No. Guy's been Klingon ambassador. Maybe Alexander. That could be fun. But yeah, that's all speculation. And now, tomorrow, Discovery starts again.
Oh, please don't remind me.
Yeah, so we'll be back in the muck on that one. So.
That show makes me want to puke.
Yeah, so till then, PayPal, Patreon down below, and we will talk at you later.